Is there anyone in a bench that is comfortable on a cushion? If you are, if you could please take a cushion, that way people could fill in behind you, because it is pretty full. Thank you. And if not, that's okay too. You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning.
I am going to ask, so if you could just slide to the end of the pew. Thank you. I appreciate it. 13 years we operated without having to do any housekeeping or any care in the world, who showed up or where you sat. And now things have changed. So if there is anyone else who's maybe just come in that is comfortable on a cushion, could you please come up and take a cushion? Also, if you're coming in just now, if you can take the seats up here. Thank you. One of the chairs. Are you comfortable there? Okay, yeah. And if you're comfortable, just grab the chair up here if you're okay with that. Unless you want to lead today. It's your first time here, right?
Yes.
We usually let first timers lead the class. What's your name?
Jane.
Jane?
Yes.
All in favor of letting Jane lead? Please raise your hand. It wasn't unanimous, but I think it was a majority.
Yeah.
Welcome. And let's see. If you are comfortable on a cushion, please. Thank you. And the pews, we're just doing two to a pew. So, yep. Oh no, you'll be okay. It's so far away. You stay there, you come up. Hey, that works. I'm always amazed at how people they don't want to leave the person they're next to, you know? But we always are just by ourselves, even if there's somebody physically next to us. We're all just, it's our own head. It's our own thoughts, our own minds. So, but sorry if I embarrassed you. I'm pretty good at that usually, as Jane found out. So we appreciate you, settling in. And like I said, we have to do things a little bit differently. Normally there would be 70, 80 people here, and there would be like 4 of you squished into a pew, and we'd be adding extra zafus and that meditation cushions. And if that were the case right now, you would all be really uncomfortable, most likely. So we appreciate you kind of following the guidelines that we've set up just to keep things as safe as we can during this pandemic and COVID time. So we appreciate it. And I promise the person you walked in with that I separated you from, they'll be waiting for you when you leave. So I can't guarantee it. But, it's a funny thing. Years ago, I listened to my master give a talk about, someone asked a question about relationships, and I don't even remember the nature of the question. I just remember the response, and it really was about the fact that when you wake up and when you go to sleep and all throughout the day, even if you are physically next to somebody, right? You are still just with yourself. It's your mind, your thoughts, your words, your actions, and that never changes. And very often we have a difficult time with that. And so part of the practice is really learning to be okay, I shouldn't say part of the practice, the entire practice is learning to be okay with just your mind, your thoughts, because that will always be with you. And, as we go through life and we have different experiences and different relationships and we age and we deal with loss and, things like that, the one thing that is consistent that we always come back to is the fact that we have our mind. And how can we function just as individuals with our own mind? And, part of that craving and desire and these attachments, I'm not talking about relationships right now completely, right? But part of that craving and desire and attachment is that constant seeking for something else or someone else with us. And, a lot of people spend their entire lives looking, our whole culture, many cultures, most cultures, are raised around, are you okay on a cushion?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you mind sitting up on one of these? Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry to flag you down, but yeah, thanks. So much about, this culture and the cultures we're raised in, and most cultures around the world are about finding someone else or something else, right? I mean, billions of dollars of advertisement are not spent every day telling you to be okay with just you. You got to go get something to make you better, or someone to make you better, or some piece of clothing, or some piece of car, or some house, or whatever it is. It's all about something or someone else. And my master talked a lot about just learning to be okay with just you. And then when you interact with other people and places and things, then you're coming at it and into it from a very beautiful place where you're comfortable with who you are. And I'm sure most of us in this room know that if we're pleasant and comfortable with ourselves, then that really has a big impact on the relationships that we have. If we're really uncomfortable and unpleasant and not okay with who we are, then that's very difficult to have healthy relationships with anything, really. So a lot of it is working on you. So I apologize for those who came here thinking that this class was going to fix everybody else in the world and make everything okay for you. But we got to work on ourselves. So good luck with that one. We'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. And welcome to our millions of YouTube followers. Thank you for joining us from all over the globe. It's not actually millions, it's probably like 15. But we still love you anyway. So thanks for being here. A couple things to tell you with the meditation practice, especially for those who might be new. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture. If you are on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. If you are on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, also just trying to relax the shoulders, keeping the stomach forward, somewhat upright. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts or you have an itch. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. Meditation is not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It gives you an opportunity to take a few moments and recognize that the crazy, hectic, stressed out mess is your own thoughts. Meditation creates space for us to just set things down for a short period of time. But then we go back into our day-to-day lives and we have to make changes. Meditation is not about being a good meditator. Doesn't matter how quiet and still and calm you feel right now, because the moment you get up and walk outside, that world out there doesn't care that you just finished your meditation. It's going 1,000 miles an hour, and if you're not careful, you will get run over. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice, free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else every moment of your life. That's what makes this practice really simple. Is all you have to do is be kind to people. We can all do that, right? At least 3 of you nodded your head yes, so that's progress, We'll take it. Often people want to complicate or attempt to or try to or think, especially if you're new, that meditation or Buddhism is this complicated thing from a very long time ago in a very far off land. All the Buddha taught was learning to wake up to what is present in your life at this moment. This has nothing to do with other countries or religions or languages or thousands of years ago. This has to do with you in every moment of your life. And to me, that's the beauty of this practice. For some, that's the difficulty of this practice. And for me, for a long time, that was incredibly difficult, because the practice is really like holding up a mirror. And when you hold up a mirror, what are you looking at? You. And that's what we work on. Ourselves. How fun is that? And I know, I get it, if everyone else, as I kind of alluded to earlier, if everyone else in the world would just do everything we want them to all the time, and say and believe and think and treat everybody the way we want them to, then everything would be fine. But that, my friends, is most likely never going to happen. I mean, I don't want to completely rule it out, but try to stay optimistic. The reality is, you are going to be faced with tremendous challenges, struggles, difficulties every day of your life. And the kinder, gentler mind that we have as we face these difficulties makes things a little bit easier. And that's what the Buddha was teaching. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. To practice these things in our daily lives. Very often, everything the Buddha taught, we learned when we were about 5 years old. We have just kind of struggled at putting it into our lives. So, with that, I'll pause. I always prefer really just to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And again, as always, I'd really prefer to just respond to your questions, your thoughts, and ramble from there. So we'll use the rest of the time this morning just to respond. So thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with
great for you guys.
Great, thank you.
I've been here probably over a year and a half now. Just curious, like, with everything that's been going on, how has this evolved your practice? What have you learned from this experience?
So the question, just to repeat for our millions of YouTube followers again, is I think at the beginning you said you've been here for about a year and a half.
I haven't been here for over a year and a half.
So you have not been here for a year.
I've not been here.
Oh, okay, sorry. So your question was you have not been here for a year and a half. So during this time, referring to the pandemic and us being closed and things like that, how has that evolved my practice? Is that your question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It is really challenging. And you've heard me, and most of you have heard me. I don't spend. I'll use experiences or things I've learned, but I don't really talk about me too much because you're all not here to learn about me. If you all actually knew about me, none of you would really be here right now. You would have left a long time ago. If I sat down and gave an hour discourse of what I've done in my life, you'd be like, I'm not listening to anything that guy says. But since it's such a personal question, this is really a challenging time. My practice for really the last, 15 years has been really centered around creating, building, hosting community. And in that is the foundation of everything I was always taught, which is the practice of the Buddhist teachings on the paramitas. And just to touch on those briefly, is the practice of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. These are, in Buddhism, they call this the Bodhisattva path. And so these are the practices within the Mahayana school of Buddhism, one of the three major schools of Buddhism, where they taught that we use these practices. Paramitas loosely translates to perfection, but it's not about being perfect. As Suzuki Roshi said to his students, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. I really like that as a teaching because anyone in here critical of themselves, right? Way more than the people that wanted you to lead. And I would be offended if I were you, So we're very critical of ourselves for whatever reason. We don't have enough time to explore that. And Suzuki Roshi said, you're perfect, just improve a little bit. So the Bodhisattva practice to me is not about being perfect, but it's recognizing areas of our lives around generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom that we can improve upon. And so when this whole thing hit, there's all of that in play. All of those paramitas are challenged on every level. So much of my personal life is this. But like everybody else, I have families dealing with health. I have friends dealing with health. I have, responsibilities dealing with health. So I would say it has greatly increased my practice because the level of concentration and focus required to manage and handle all of this. It's funny, my phone completely died, right? Or just about completely died. So I finally, instead of restarting it every, 30 minutes, which was a fun practice, I finally, said this thing's done, got a new one. And all of a sudden, as I was coming in here, I would always put my phone on Do Not Disturb. But, with every new thing, they change things. You have to figure out where's the Do Not Disturb button. So, after 3 minutes of trying to find the Do Not Disturb button, I guess I could have just thrown it out the window. That would have done the same thing. But I found that it was hidden in some category called focus. And I really laughed that even the phones now, this was at least my interpretation of it, have recognized that focus, which leads to Do Not Disturb, is a time where you're going to not be distracted. So it's almost like the phone is saying, this thing is a massive distraction, which I'm sure is a newsflash to all of you. But the reason I brought it up, just because it was so fresh in my mind, is that when we are facing tremendous difficulties and challenges, your level of distraction must decrease, or you cannot function in a healthy way. So challenges, absolutely. this has by far been probably the most difficult 2 years of my life that I've ever faced. Definitely. But here we are, So does that answer the question? Yeah.
Happy to be back here.
Thank you. Good to have you back. Yeah. I mean, we always say so imagine the stress and chaos and difficulty and challenges you have in your life, right? You have a lot. So we see about 600 to 800 of you a week, all in this little space. So it's a phenomenal practice because we have to make sure that if at all possible, every single person who enters these doors in person now and virtually is comfortable and feels safe and can be vulnerable. And that's not a lot of, that requires a lot of practice for all of us who, are here, including yourselves. But anytime you struggle or you're challenged in life, it's really, if you begin to understand the basic things the Buddha was teaching around meditation, concentration, focus, things like that, it's not about the escape, right? The Eightfold Path, views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration are the 7th and 8th step on the path that the Buddha taught to ending our suffering, to suffering less, to awakening. And when he was talking about meditation and concentration, to me, the way I interpret that is not as my life is a mess, I need to go meditate because that's going to fix things. No, I need to bring concentration and focus into my life because my wandering mind, my distracted mind, my mind that allows all the madness of the world to really destroy me is crushing me. So I must concentrate and focus on what's present and what's important. Just ask yourself how much time you spend trying to change, fix, control, manipulate other things and people that you have zero control over. Right? So, yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Kind of think back on the pandemic. We talk about generosity. Most people think about generosity as like charity
Yeah.
or something like that. During these times, how do you practice generosity when you can't be there because you have to keep other people safe or something?
Sure. Part of it you actually answered at the very end of it. You said you can't be generous because you have to keep people safe. Keeping people safe is the most generous thing you can do. Right? Let me rephrase the question. Let me just repeat the question for those who didn't hear it. So I understand it correctly. You said during the pandemic, I mentioned generosity, and that often people think of generosity as charity, but how do you practice generosity during a pandemic, right? So when I introduce generosity, which again, for those who are brand new, the first thing the Buddha taught, the Four Noble Truths, the first thing he said is life is filled with suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks. It just means we're going to be challenged a lot. Some extreme and some trivial sufferings, like too many pumps of whatever in your latte. And all of a sudden your whole hour is ruined and you're screaming at the person who gave you, not enough foam or whip or whatever it is. So there's that suffering, which in that moment, you feel it. You're like, this sucks. I paid you $4.50 because I want extra whip. And there's no extra whip. Like, how dare you, you're going to get through your day okay. And then there's loss, death, real abuse, trauma, real heavy suffering. So the Buddha said your life is filled with all of this, right? There's also beautiful things, but nobody comes to Buddhist practice because they're focused on all the beautiful things in their life, right? The second thing he says is, what's the cause of your suffering? And he taught what's called the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. The first thing, greed, you overcome greed with the practice of generosity. So generosity is the number one most important practice in Buddhist teachings. And when I talk about generosity, and you preface this way, I never talk about generosity around giving charity, money, things like that, because it is so much different from that. It doesn't mean that's not a part of it, but we give people time. We give people our attention. We give them smiles. We give them hugs. Less smiles with a mask on, less hugs during a pandemic, right? We give people our trust. We give people our friendship. We give people our sincerity. We give people our distance. You are all being very generous right now by actually sitting in the seats the way we've set them up. You're giving people comfort. You're giving people a feeling of security, right? So much giving has nothing to do, and that's, I think, how you asked it, really, with like tangible objects or resources is the word I'm looking for, right? I just said recently to somebody that someone who was exposed to COVID, and I said the Buddhist teachings focus on compassion and wisdom. And someone who had been exposed, this was around getting a test. And I said, look, you want to practice Buddhism, right? You're interested in Buddhism. You've been around it forever. And you've been exposed to COVID, but you're having difficulties like around getting a test. And I said, the most wise, compassionate thing you can do is get tested for the benefit of others. That is the most generous thing you can give people, is safety, comfort, protection. So many things around this pandemic. And then the reason, again, for those who are new to Buddhism, that the focus on generosity is that when we give, who is it not about? Ourselves. I mean, we all know sometimes we give and we're like, that felt good, and so we pat ourselves on the back. And there's nothing wrong with that. The Buddha taught around giving to feel pleasant before. The word is dana, which translates to generosity, which Westerners ruin and translate to money. Right? So the teaching was dana, translates in English to generosity, and Western people say, now practice what the Buddha taught and give money. That's disgusting. It ruins the heart of what the Buddha was teaching about generosity, right? So the teaching was to feel pleasant before, during, and after giving. And now I get it. We all, I'm sure at some point in our lives, have helped people, whether it's once in your lifetime or daily. And when we help people, we feel good. We've had the food redistribution. We feed people on the streets for years. It's on hold right now during the pandemic, right? Again, for the safety. But often people say, I feel good when I do it. It doesn't mean that that's bad to feel good. And some people say the only reason I do it is because it makes me feel good. There's also nothing wrong with that. But it's a very important recognition that in that act of giving, it's still all about you. Still do it, because eventually you kind of burn off some of that karma and you might realize like, wow, it's not all about me. And the Buddha said we suffer because we're attached to ourself, our ego, our story, everything we think about me, that is most important in the world. I mean, most people don't wake up in the morning and think, I hope everybody has breakfast today. We wake up and think, I'm hungry, I want breakfast, or coffee, or whatever it is. And so when we give, it takes the self out of the equation. So many opportunities to give, virtually, listening, social media. Stop complaining. Do you like, what's your name? Sorry. Raquel. Do you, say again? Rakesh, do you like listening to people complain? No. That was a pretty profound no. That was a head shake. That was a strong no. That was a definite no. Now, at the risk of putting you on the spot, again, do you complain?
I try not to, but yeah.
And it's a simple yes or no question.
Yes.
Yes, all right. One of the Buddhist teachings is around no lying too, so we got to be very careful there. The question was, do you complain? The response is yes, for the record. So one of the things you could give, and I'm not saying that, I'm not talking about around social justice that, just be silent, become a doormat. That's not the teaching here. The teaching is that we complain a lot about meaningless things, and we don't like listening to other people complain. So we could give people peace and quiet by not complaining so much. And if you're not complaining about trivial things, then you could actually focus on things that make a difference, right? So lots of things we can give. Yeah, does that help?
Yes.
Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you.
And you're going to go all day without complaining today, right?
Well, it depends on kids at home.
Oh, you got kids. Can you at least make it to like, it's almost 12. Can you make it to 1?
I think so.
Did you drive here?
Yes.
Drive really slowly, don't know. Other questions? Yeah.
How do you separate the ego from generosity?
So the question of how do you separate the ego from generosity? Great question, very philosophical. You like to think a lot?
Yes.
You like to figure stuff out?
Yes.
You like to understand things? This practice is going to suck for you. It's also going to be so critical. Are you brand new to Buddhism?
Yes.
Oh yeah, you're right there. Don't quit on it before it makes a difference, right? So I know someone else who likes to think a lot. I know someone else who likes to try to figure stuff out. I know someone else who's very philosophical. Do you ever tend to think you're right a lot? Don't lie. Yeah, okay. This practice, I'll probably respond to your question, but let me just preface it, which is more important. The greatest thing about Buddhism, I found as an individual practitioner, is that you can't win. You cannot beat it. There's no like, I have figured it out, I have mastered it, I know it all. It is a constant shedding of the ego. Constant. So the question, which is how do you give without ego? Just work on getting rid of ego. You're jumping a lot of steps and saying, I want to give without ego. But all over here is your ego. Your ego wants to know, how do I give without it being my ego? Without doing it, well, this isn't a fair statement, but I'll say it anyways, because I don't even know you. What's your name?
Zach.
Zach, I don't know anything about you, so what I'm about to say is not true, not fair, but work with me here, right? You want to figure out how to give without ego, without having done anything to work on cutting through your ego. I mean that just from like the Buddhist lens. Doesn't haven't spent your life working on that. But most people have spent our lives building our ego. This practice is cutting through it, cutting through the sense of self, cutting through the pride, cutting through the ego. When you begin to cut through all of that, and the ego is much less, just keep giving. Right? So there was a Sri Lankan master years ago, he gave a great teaching, and he said, he was talking about generosity, the true dana, and pleasant before, pleasant during, and pleasant after, as the Buddha taught. And he said, true dana is like buying a bike for a child, whether it's your child or a stranger's child or someone. That'd be kind of weird, but you know, someone else's child that you know, right? You buy a bike for a child, and while you're shopping for this bike, you feel really pleasant. You pick it out, bring the bike, you give the bike, you see the child's eyes, you know, they're all excited. Unless they like hate the bike, but let's just assume they're excited. And then all of a sudden, you feel pleasant when you've given the bike. And then you see the child ride off on the bike, and you feel pleasant. That's dana. It's not about you. But if you are someone, and I'm not talking about you, this is just to everybody, because it's quite possible other people in this room have egos as well. If everything about your life is focused on you and your ego, then everything in your life is going to be focused around you and your ego. So giving without ego has nothing to do with the giving part of it. It has to do with the ego part of it. And if you stay at this practice every day for the next like 25 years, you'll have cut through a little bit of that ego. So does that help? Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Somewhere I saw a hand. Yeah, go ahead.
In relation to giving and ego, it seems like one of the most like generous things you could do is to hold space for someone. So I was thinking about like the giving that's related to us and the giving that's related to others. So holding space when maybe you disagree, right? But just knowing that you're allowing someone's process to happen. I think that's truly like disconnecting from the ego, right? Sitting quietly, noticing, not trying to impact it or influence. It's what I'm practicing.
Yeah, beautiful. You done? That it? Yeah, I don't want to. I mean, because as you're talking, in my head, I'm thinking, what's your name? I'm thinking, let Crystal finish. Let Crystal finish. Listen to what she's saying. She's talking about holding space, giving people space. Shut up, Jeff. Let her finish. Like that was going through my head as you were talking. So I grew up talking a lot and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, here you are talking about holding the space, and all I'm wanting to do is like respond in the middle of that statement, right? The recognition of that is so critical in all areas of our lives, especially in areas of conflict with loved ones, family, friends, things like that. You know, all you have to do is, for anyone, ask yourself anytime you've been in an argument with somebody, right? And there's that banter back and forth, and we immediately want to just defend and prove and win. And it's really what you touched on so beautifully is we're not, very often, we don't give people that space to just express. And so it can be a really beautiful practice of generosity. Anyone been in an argument recently? Today? I mean, it's already, I saw your hand pretty quick. You got in an argument today? Not today. Yesterday, maybe recent? Doesn't matter. A week ago. So when you were in this argument, did you think you were right? Some things. Oh, I appreciate the honesty, right? And what did the other person think? That he was right in everything. So you were only right in some things. He thought he was right in everything. That's pretty standard. When we find ourselves in these arguments, which will happen constantly, it is a beautiful practice of giving, listening, to just allow people to express what's on their mind. And when it comes to forgiveness, this came up a couple days ago. When it comes to forgiveness and, you know, dealing with loss and pain and, you know, moving beyond things that we hold on to, you know, past resentments or past angers or frustrations or whatever it is, part of that giving also is to give that space to ourselves, to allow ourselves time to heal and to not always fight back with the crazy mind, crazy thoughts in our head. So, and that's kind of tied back to my question earlier, my response earlier about, you know, Buddhist practice being, you know, it's not something you win. We're so built in our cultures and conditioned in Buddhism, they call it, to try to have to be better or faster or stronger to win or conquer, whatever it is, right? I mean, when you're born and you can like crawl, most people don't tell you like, yes, just crawl the rest of your life. You know, you can crawl and they want you to, you know, stand and then walk and then run. Like it's always something else. And to me, Buddhist practice, there's no next level. There's no, I've beat it or I've figured it out or I've conquered it or I've won. It's just a constant day-to-day exploration of your own sense of an attachment to self. So, yeah.
I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the role of the Sangha and the community in all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, so I'll close with this thought, and the question is to talk about the role of the Sangha in the community. It's vital. You know, it's at the very beginning when we take refuge, and I kind of go through it as my practice, and, you know, people are welcome to join in or not. You know, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and like the very core fundamental Buddhist teachings, they talk about taking refuge in the three jewels or the triple gem. The first one is the Buddha. Not the Buddha himself, because he died 2,500 years ago and he can't help you much right now, right? You're on your own. But the idea that we all have what's called bodhicitta or Buddha nature, that the Buddha was a human, you know, he woke, he went to the bathroom, he ate, he slept, he did all these things just like us. So if the Buddha, who was human, could figure out how to end his suffering, so can we. That we all have that awakened being within us. It's not like the Buddha was some god or separate from us. The second thing we take refuge in is the Dharma, and that's the teachings. What he taught, because when you look at the word refuge, without breaking it down too much, comfort, safety, protection, right? These are things we find in safe spaces. And so when we look at taking refuge in the teachings, they create a safe space in our mind, in our hearts, and in the community that we enter, which leads to the third one, which is taking refuge in the Sangha, in the community. And at the time of the Buddha, it was, the disciples and the nuns and the monks and who they were immediately practicing with. And in kind of modern day, Sangha is the group of people that you come together with in the Buddhist world, in meditation, in Buddhist temples, things like that. But I look at Sanghas as everywhere. When you're stuck in traffic, that's your Sangha. Now, here's the thing, and then I'll wrap up with kind of probably a response to your question, which often I even respond to people's questions. So all of you in here, so many of you in here, some of you know each other, some of you don't know each other, but nobody in here right now is screaming and yelling at each other. Nobody's flipping each other off. Nobody's yelling F you. Nobody's yelling get out of my way. Nobody's yelling make my latte better. But you know who all you people are outside these walls? Those people, right? You are screaming at each other when you're out in traffic. You are the ones answering the customer service phones. You are the ones making people's drinks. You are the ones serving people. You are the ones that are annoying and driving each other crazy out there. In fact, somebody somewhere else is in a meditation or therapy somewhere else because of you, right? And you're all here. And in this setting, it's like, oh yeah, I call it the namaste face. Let's get together and join palms and say namaste and hug and smile and chat. And those things are incredibly important because in safe, comfortable spaces, it allows us to open up and be vulnerable and honest. And you're not going to be driving in traffic and roll down the window and open up your heart to a complete stranger next to you who just cut you off, right? So we practice it in these places. And really the Buddhist teachings around Sangha are, this is tough stuff to do on your own. And when you can be supported by others who are also not like-minded, because as I always say, you all don't have the same mind, thankfully, because if you had my mind, this would be a whole big mess. We all have our own minds. We're not the same in this room, but we have a similar intention right now. That intention is to be calmer, to be kinder, to be gentler, to forgive, whatever it is. It's a beautiful intention. And when you put that in spaces and come from that place, that's why everybody digs this kind of stuff. Now the question is, can we recognize when we're in traffic and when we're dealing with colleagues and when we're dealing with family, that they're also dealing with the same mess that we are? And can we treat them with the same kindness that you would like an absolute stranger in this space? So Sangha, vital, incredibly important, it keeps you, at least for me, from a personal place, it helps hold you accountable as well, and then can you keep that mindset and carry that in other sanghas that don't necessarily make you feel the same way, but you have the ability to have the same view, right? Because you don't know most of these people in here right now, right? But you're not going to go up and start yelling at somebody here, right? But that person could be out there. So, does that help? Yeah. All right, so I'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during the pandemic and to their family and friends who still suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple nearly 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who leave, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're definitely not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our unenlightened views of Buddhist teachings and share it with those who show up. We closed for 16 months during the pandemic. We opened up maybe 10 weeks ago. So we have a handful of classes in person right now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. I do this class, same thing on Tuesdays. Alex does a metta, loving kindness practice on Wednesdays. And Travis does a Dharma Bum Basics and meditation on Thursdays. And then, of course, here Saturday morning, we have 2 recovery classes going on right now in person. So anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, anything for that matter, we meet here Sunday morning at 10 and Tuesday night downstairs. Right now, the only classes requiring RSVPs are this one, Saturday morning. Through the website, you must RSVP because it does fill up and we don't want to turn people away. And if you do RSVP and you can't make it, please let us know so we can open up a seat. And people are getting much better at that, so we really do appreciate it. It just allows us to not make people stand outside and wait for a seat. So thank you for doing that. And Tuesday night's Recovery Sangha, which is downstairs, also requires an RSVP. Other than that, everything is on Zoom or YouTube. As I alluded to earlier, now we get to run an in-person temple and a virtual temple. So it's been a beautiful opportunity to really kind of expand the Sangha and reach more folks. So nothing out of the ordinary coming up. Again, we spent years not caring who comes in or who you are or what you're wearing or where you sit. And now we track you and we take your social security number and all that kind of stuff when you walk in. So we appreciate you, wearing the mask and being safe and, again, practicing the generosity for others. Buddha for You, same thing. It's closed all week. It opens Saturday, Sunday. So it's open now downstairs between 12 and 3, and then an hour during the week before the classes. Temple also is closed all day during the week. We do sit at 8 and 8:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday. It's a silent sit. There's no class. There's no teaching or talk. It's just 2 30-minute sessions to sit and meditate. So you're welcome to just show up for that at 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Other than that, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Good luck.